Good afternoon, everyone. This Shabbat, we are going to be reading the Torah portion called YaYeira, talking about how God appeared and three angels appeared to Abraham after he circumcised himself. After we finish reading this Torah portion, there is a portion usually it's from the prophets, but once in a while it's from other books of the Torah, like for instance this Shabbat, when the Torah portion is from the book of Kings, and it tells the strange story of Elisha. Elisha, he was the pupil and the successor of Elijah the prophet. Why they call him Elijah, I have no idea, because in the Torah he's called Eliyahu. So how you get from Eliyahu, Elijah, I don't know. But anyway, that's what they did, Elisha. So this one is called Elisha. And it says that Elisha was even more powerful, spiritual than Elijah was. And he did all sorts of miracles. After the story is a story where he takes one loaf of bread and he provides it for like 2,000 people. And the whole, a lot of his pupils, they ate by mistake. They ate like some sort of fruits or something. They were all poisoned. And he threw a little bit of sand in there and told them to eat the same fruit, and everybody got better. But here's a real knockout one. There's a child that dies, and he brings them back to life. Here we got two amazing stories from Elisha. Okay, when did Elisha live? He didn't have an easy life at all. None of these people did. Elisha, he lived like about the first 100 years after after King Solomon died. After King Solomon died. So like right around in the first 100 years of the first temple. The first temple lasted for 410 years. And he was like, sort of near the end of that 400, the first 100 of the 410 years. In that time, as soon as King Solomon died, as the kingdom was split into two, King Solomon had a son that was called Rehoboam, and he was not a very popular king. He wasn't really a good king either, but at least he wasn't a sinful king. And came along a prophet and told this very great man, great, if you want to call a holy man, by the name of Yerovam ben Nevat, that he should divide the country. If not, there was going to be civil war or something, so divide the country. So he took 10 tribes. 10 tribes went after him, and they were mostly in the upper part of Israel, in the land of Israel, and they made their own kingdom called the Kingdom of Israel. And sometimes it's called Ephraim, because he was from the tribe of Ephraim. And the lower part, that was called Yehuda. The lower part, there was only Yehuda and Benjamin. And eventually Benjamin sort of got swallowed up into Yehuda. So there's only, okay. So, meanwhile, one thing these had in common is the kings sometimes were really losers. I mean, they were really big sinners. And the first one was the beginner, Yerovam ben Nevat. As soon as he became the king, and he was very promising, he knew the whole Torah and all the secrets of the Torah and everything. And he immediately built 2 golden calves, and he encouraged the worship of these idols. And they were also worshiping another idol called the Baal, which, as far as I understand, was like worshiping the sun or something. And he put guards so that people wouldn't go down to the Holy Temple. And that's what it was for the whole duration of the first temple. All the 10 tribes, they didn't go down. Maybe right in the end they did a little. Yeah. They didn't go down the first temple. There was the first temple. Why do we have to go to the first temple? We have 2 golden calves. Okay, how they worshiped idols, that's not our point. The point is that there stood up these prophets that tried to tell everybody that you're making a big mistake. One of these prophets was a prophet called Ovadia. And Ovadia, he was like either a convert or the son of converts. In any case, he took, what was it? 100 prophets, and he hid them away. Because at that time, the queen of the kingdom of Israel, she wasn't really the queen, she was the ruler over her husband. Her husband was called Achav, and his wife was Izebel. And Izebel was really bad news. I mean, Achav was really not much better, but he let her, so she decided to kill all of the prophets because they were like competition with her, whatever her logic was. Anyway, So this Ovadia, he hid away like 100 prophets, I think it was what, 100, 550 in two different, here it doesn't say how many. That's right, 100. He hid away 100 prophets, 50 in two different caves, and he had to provide for them to eat. And so he gave up all of his money, and then he had to borrow money. Who did he borrow money from? From the son of Achav, the king, who lent him this money at interest, which you're not allowed to do in Judaism, but they didn't really care that much about. I mean, they did much more severe things. So this was like a little sin. So his name was Yehoram, and Yehoram, he lent all this money to this prophet Ovadia, and and so he incurred tremendous debts. And then Ovadia, he dies. But eventually the situation gets better. They're not killing the prophets anymore, but he's got this tremendous debt to Yehoram, who Yehoram also becomes the king. He's like 2 kings removed or something from Achav. So here we have the story about Isha Achat, one of a woman. This is in the book of Kings, chapter 4. The second, there's 2 books of Kings. First book of Kings, second book. This is the second book of Kings. One woman from the first book of Kings deals with King Solomon. There was one woman from the wives of the Bnei Nevi'im, from the pupils of Nevi'im. And she called out to Elisha. Now, right, Elijah, that's Elijah the prophet. And she said, Avdecha ishi mate, your servant, and from this we learned his name was Ovadia. Your servant, my husband, he died. And you know that your servant he feared God, was a God-fearing person. But Hanoshebo, the creditors are not coming. He borrowed a lot of money in order to sustain these prophets that he hid away. I mean, Izebel, she killed, who knows, thousands and thousands of prophets. In those days, what is a prophet? A prophet is a Jew that he purifies himself. He thinks about God, he prays to God, he learns Torah, does commandments, only does good things, and then God sends him messages from heaven. They get inspiration, heavenly inspiration. And some of them were, really big time. So not all of them are written down, but there were thousands and thousands of prophets. So he said, your servant, Ovadia, that was one of the pupils, I guess, of Elisha. So now comes the creditor, who is the king, this King Yoram, and he's going to take my 2 sons for servants because I can't pay him back. So he's going to take my sons as a payment. Elisha said to her, Ma'aselach, what can I do for you? Tagidili, say to me. Ma yesh lach babayit. If you got anything in your house, maybe like a piece of bread or something. I mean, in order to give a blessing has to fall on something. So I can't give you a blessing for nothing, nothing. She said, Ein l'shifchasa, your maidservant, and I don't have anything in the house. Nothing. Ki'im asuch shemen, a little bottle of oil. Which what's that going to do? I haven't got anything to put the oil on. I haven't got any bread. I haven't got anything. A little bottle of oil and my 2 sons and me. That's all I got. Maybe no furniture also. Vayomer, and he said back to her, L'chi sha'ali lach kelim min hachutz. Go and borrow vessels from your next door neighbors. Me'is kol shechenayich. Right, from all of your neighbors. By the way, this happens to be my bar mitzvah portion. I was not religious Jew until I was like about 25, but everybody, any self-respecting Jew, and that's what it was. You made a bar mitzvah for your kid. The bar mitzvah was a big party. And you make the bar mitzvah. So my father, of blessed memory, he was not a religious Jew, but the things that he did 100%. So he took me to get my bar mitzvah in the Orthodox synagogue that was there. There was Young Israel. I guess you call it modern Orthodox, but it was Orthodox synagogue. And so they taught me bar mitzvah. The fact is, they did not teach me bar mitzvah. I was the worst kid, and I'm not really proud of it. I guess maybe I sort of am proud of it. I was the worst kid in the whole school. And eventually they evicted me. And my father really got angry because he was paying for this, and they didn't teach me the main thing, which was the bar mitzvah. He didn't care about Judaism, or I have to know the bar mitzvah. So I learned the bar mitzvah at home, and I learned it pretty good. We bought a record, and I got it. And my father even took me back to the rabbi and told me to sing it. And the rabbi was very impressed because I had a nice voice, And then my father really, got mad at the rabbi. Okay, back to the story. So this was my bar mitzvah. So he says, Elisha says to this lady, "What have you got in the house?" She said, "I got nothing. I don't think there's no furniture." He said, "Listen, go to your neighbors, borrow from them empty vessels, al tamiti, and don't limit the vessels. As many vessels, fill the house up with vessels. But the cigar then go and close the door, close the door on you and your son so that no one can come in. And then take this little bottle of oil and start pouring into the vessels. As soon as one gets filled up, have one of your sons move it away, and the other son will bring an empty one in its place. So she went from him, and she did what he said. She borrowed all these vessels, and she closed the door, and on her and her sons. They're bringing to her empty vessels, and she pours. I mean, she probably figured, okay, how much can I pour? There's in this little bottle is like, a half of an ounce or something, and these vessels can hold gallons and gallons. Anyway, so she's pouring, and the vessels start filling up. As soon as all the vessels are filled, she said to her son, Higisha Eli Od Kili, bring me another vessel. And he said, Ain't Od Kili, there's no more vessels. As soon as he said that, the oil stopped. From this, we know that we have to make the vessels for God. Let God take care of. We have to do something, and God will provide the rest. Okay, so it says, she went and she said to this godly man, I have 1,000 gallons of oil. Go and sell the oil. At the nishayach, and pay off the creditor. And you and your children, you can live on what's left over. Good story. She became rich from this little bottle of oil that Elisha blessed. Next, there came the day, Vayavor Elisha el Shunam. He went to the city called Shunam. There was a woman, an older woman, and she beseeched him to come in and eat some bread. Now, Elisha, he would wander around seeing what had to be done. He was a shliach, and he was also the Rebbe also. And it came midday avro, and every time he would go by her house, v'yasser shama, he would go there to eat bread. But Tomer Elisha, he said to the woman, Hine na yadati, I know ki ish Elokim kadoshu. That's right. I'm sorry. Take it back. But Tomer El Isha, he said to her husband, Isha, her husband, Hine na yadati, I know ki ish Elokim kadoshu over aleno. Again, sorry. She said, the woman said to her husband, right? She said, I know that this holy man is coming to us. Tamid, all the time. Nasa na aliyat kir, let us make a little room, like in the attic. V'nasim lo, and we'll put over there, sham, a mita v'shulchan kisei menorah, a bed, a table, a chair, a chair, and a lamp. When he ever comes to us, Yosur Shama, he can go there, he can live there, right? He wants to stay a day, he wants to stay whatever he wants. And it came to the day, and he was there. He went to this little attic room, and he laid down there. Now, Elisha had a servant, and the servant was Gehazi. That was his name, Gehazi. He's going to make trouble in the end, you'll see. He said to his servant, Gehazi, Kara l'shunamit, call to this lady, Vayikra Allah, and he called her. Batamod, and she stood there before him. Vayomer lo, and Elisha said to his servant, Emor na'aleha, say to her, Hine chararat aleinu es kol hacharata azot. You troubled yourself, all of this trouble, built a special room, giving us to eat. Me la'asot lach. What can we do for you? Hayesh davar lach el hamelech. Can I talk to you, to the king? The king had great respect for Elisha, even though the king. Okay, oh el sarat tzava. Maybe I can talk to the chief of staff of the army. Maybe you want them to plow your land or something. But Tomer, she said, "Batochami ani yeshavet. I am quiet. I live among the people. I don't want to be obtrusive. I'm just, I'm happy with what I've got." But Yomer omer la'asot lach. What can I do for her? He said to his servant. But Yomer Gehazi, and his servant Gehazi said, "Avol ben einla. She hasn't got a son. V'isha zakein, and her husband is old." By Yomer Krala, call her again. V'yikrala b'tamud. She came again and she stood before him. B'petach, in the opening of the door. By Yomer, and he said, "Lamoed hazeh ke'et chaya." At this time, at this time, at chobeket ben, you're going to have a son. 1 year from now, exactly the same date, you're going to have a son. Vatomer el Adoni Isha Elokim, and she said, then she said, Al Adoni Isha Elokim, please, don't do it, my master, holy man. Al techazev b'shiv chasad. Don't lie. Don't build me up false hopes. That's what she said. Vatarisha, and sure enough, she became pregnant. Vatelid bain, and she gave birth to a son. Lamoed hazeh ke'is chaya, at that very time, the next year. Asher diber Elisha, that Elisha said to her. Vayigdal hayeled, the child got bigger. Vayehi hayom, and it came the day. Vayetzel el aviv el hakotzrim. He went out to his father where they were harvesting. Ve'omer el aviv, and he said to his father, Roshi, my head hurts. I have a terrible headache. Vayomer elanar, and he said to the child, Elanar, to one of his helpers, to one of the boys, Se'eu elimo, take the boy to his mother. Maybe his mother will give him some tea or something, who knows what. They lifted him up and they brought him to his mother. Vayeshev el birkeha, and the child sat on her lap until the afternoon, vayamot, and he died. Vatal, the woman stood up, Patishkaveu al mitat ish Elokim, and she put him on the bed of Elisha up in the attic word. Batizgor ba'adol, and she closed the door, Batetsei, and she left. She didn't tell anybody what happened. Batikra Elisha, she called her husband. Batomer, she said, Shalchana li echad min ha'arim, give me one of the boys to accompany me. Va'achad atanot, and give me a donkey. Va'arutza Elisha Elokim, I want to speedily go to the holy man, to Elisha. Va'shuv, and I'll come back, don't worry. Va'yomer, and her husband said to her, Madua at holechet elav, why are you going to him? Hayom, today. Lo chodesh, it's not the beginning of the month. In those days, they used to make on Rosh Chodesh, they would bring special sacrifices in the altar, and it was sort of a similar semi-holiday. It's not the beginning of the month, and it's not Shabbat. But Tomer, she said shalom. She said goodbye. I'll be back. Vatachbosh ason, she saddled up the donkey. Vatomer al nara, and she said to the boy that was with her, Nahag v'lech, go, al tatzor li lirkov. Ki'im amart, don't stop riding until I tell you. Vatelech v'tavo eleish, she went to the holy man, to Elisha, and where was he? He was on Mount Carmel. On Mount Carmel. Vayihi, and it was, Mount Carmel was also where there was this, you remember there was this, they say this battle between Elijah the prophet, Elijah, the teacher of Elisha, and all the servants of the Baal. Remember that he made fire come from heaven? Anyway, so he went to Mount Carmel. And when Elisha, when he saw her, mineged, approaching, Vayomer, he said to Gehazi, Naro, here's that woman that we gave the blessing. She had the children, right? I haven't seen her for years. Atana rutzla likrota, go run to meet her. Omerla, and say to her, Ashalom lach, is everything okay? Ashalom li sheikh, is your husband all right? Ashalom li yelid, is the child all right? Vatomer, and she said back to Gehazi, she said to the servant, Shalom, everything is okay. Vatavo Elisha lokim, but then she came herself to Elisha, Elahar, to the mountain. Vatechazik baraglav, and I grabbed onto his feet. Vayigash Gehazi nadfa, and the servant Gehazi, he wanted to push her away. Vayomer Elisha lokim, and the holy man Elisha said, Harpena, leave her alone. Ki nafsha marala, she's very bitter. Her heart is very bitter. She's suffering. V'Hashem he'lim mimeni, and God hid it from me. I didn't know what happened. Below Yigidli, and he didn't tell me. Right? Elisha was saying, Atomra Hasha'alti ben me'is Adoni. She said, did I request a son from you? Hello, Amarti, did I not say, Lo tashleoti, don't fool me? Vayomer Gehazi, and Vayomer Gehazi, so Elisha said to him, she understood what was going on. Then Elisha understood what was happening. He said, I understand there must be big troubles with her son. So he said to his servant, Gehazi, Chagor matnacha, put on your belt. In other words, prepare yourself for a journey. Kach mishanti, take my staff, biyadcha, in your hand, v'lech, and go. Ki timsa ish lo tavorchenu. If you meet anybody on the road, don't bless him, don't talk to him. Ki yivorech ish lo tanenu. If somebody says, hello, how are you? Don't answer him. V'samta mishanti, and then take my staff and put it on the child. Vatomer emanar, and the Shunammite, the lady, the mother of the child, said, Chai Hashem, God is living. B'chai nafshecha, and you are alive. Im ezaveka, if I leave you. Vayakam, and she left, and she went after. She said to Gehazi, I'm going with you. I'm going with Gehazi. Okay, Gehazi, he went, but Gehazi avar lifneim. Gehazi, he walked before them, the lady and her servant, and he reached the child, went up to the attic, and he put the staff on the face of the child, and it didn't do anything. There's no sound and there's no movement or anything. And he said, he went back to Elisha, and he said it didn't work. Now, why didn't it work? Because the fact is this Gehazi, he couldn't keep quiet. And everybody, if somebody said hello to him, he said, well, I'm going. Elisha sent me to bring somebody back to life. I'm not just a regular guy on the street. Watch this. In any case, so he put the staff on the child and it didn't work. And Elisha understood what was going on. Vayovo Elisha habaita. So Elisha himself took the staff and he went to the lady's house. And he saw the child is dead. Now, the child has probably already been dead a couple of days because it took time for him for the time when he died. And he went to her, and the Gehazi went, and he went back, and she went. Mushkav al mitotzo, and he was laying on the bed. Vayavo, and he came. V'yizgor adelet, and Elisha closed the door. Ba'ad shneim, on both of them. V'yit palel, and he prayed to God. Vayal, and he got up. Vayishkav al yeled, and he laid down on the child. Vayasem piv al piv, ve'enav al enav, v'kapav al kapav. He put his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, and his hands on the child's hands. Vayik haralav, and he coughed on him, blew out. Vayacham basar yeled, and the child, all of a sudden, his flesh became alive. It would be warm. A dead person is cold. Vayashav yeled b'bayit, the child stood up. Vayashav v'yelech b'bayit, he sat up. And he started walking in the house. One over there, one over here. Vayal v'yikhar alav. V'yizrora now. I'm sorry, not so. Elisha got up. Elisha got up and he walked in the house, in the room, back and forth. Vayal v'yigar alav. Again, he went and he blew into the child. V'yizorera yelled the nar, and the child woke up sheva pamim, at 7 times. 7 times. Vayipakach hanar et einav. The child opened up his eyes. Vayikra el Gehazi, and he called Gehazi, and he said, Kora l'shunamit, call this woman. V'yikra'eno, and he called her Vatavo elav, and she came at him. So here we already see it's something like the story about Abraham, that he didn't have any children. They didn't have any children. They had this child. So here we have a miraculous birth. Vayomer se'i benech, and he said, take your son is alive. Vatavo v'tipol raglav, and she came and fell to his feet. V'yishtachu arza, and she bowed down to the ground. Vatisa et bana vateitzei. Who was this child, by the way? The child became Habakkuk. Habakkuk, another prophet. Habakkuk, another. Why? Because he said, "At chobeket bein, you will hug a child." He promised her in the beginning that you will have a child. The miraculous birth and rebirth, except the enlivening of Habakkuk, the child Habakkuk, that was done by Elisha the prophet. And after this, that's the end of this week's Torah portion, right? That's the end of this portion. And here we have the story that says that that his pupils, he had pupils, I don't know, hundreds of pupils, and they ate from this porridge that was poison. They didn't know. And he took a little bit of flour, not dirt. He took a little bit of flour and he threw it into the pot. And he said, now eat. Let everybody eat. And they ate and they came back alive. Okay, that's number one. Then here's the one that he got. He gave 20 loaves of bread, and he said, give to the people to eat. And somebody said, how are you going to give this 20 loaves of bread? It says there's 100 people. It says that really there wasn't 100 people, that there was one loaf of bread and there was 1,000 people. In any case, 20 loaves for 100 people is also, pretty good. One loaf of bread for 5 people. Anyway, so he said, let them eat. And sure enough, they ate and there was left over. And sure enough, they ate and the food was left over. Okay, but that comes afterwards. Read in this, you'll see the amazing miracles that Elijah the prophet did. Okay, that is this week's Haftorah. Haftorah that we'll read after the miraculous story of Elijah the prophet, how he made one small bottle of oil, which held, a half of an ounce or something, that produced thousands of gallons of oil, and how he miraculously brought a woman that was old and barren to have a child, and how he brought this child back to life from the dead. Have a good day with Mashiach. I'll tell you a short story. If we're already doing this, I'll tell you a short story. Good story. 2 Hasidim went into the, I think it's the Rebbe Marash. No, was it the Rebbe Marash? I think it was, or the Tzemach Tzedek. I don't remember. That's not right. I think they went into the Tzemach Tzedek, if I'm not mistaken. The third Rebbe of Chabad. One of them was a big genius, and he wrote this big book of genius ideas. And the other one, he wrote a simple book with stories. So the Rebbe took the person with the stories first, and he gave him a big blessing. And the other one, he didn't give such a big blessing. The one that he didn't give such a big blessing to, he said, why? I wrote this big book. Why did you take him first? He said, because first of all, in the Chumash, we see that there are stories. The Chumash, the Bible, starts off with stories. He has a book of stories, right? So therefore, I took him first, because stories are more, how do you say, down to earth. So to the first Chassid, he gave him advice. He said, you should read the prophets with the Yiddish translation. That's what he said. And he gave him other blessings. To the Chassid that wrote this very erudite, big, thick book, he said to him that you should learn, when you pray in the morning, you should pray understanding the simple meaning of the words. So he said, Rebbe, I already know the simple meaning of the words. So he said, oh, really? That's how you pray? You pray praises to the floorboard. Haluka, halu elakerish. Praises to the floorboard. Okay, so the second one didn't understand. He really felt bad. Here he came in with this big, beautiful book that he had worked on so long. And the Rebbe gave him a very simple sort of a blessing, and not only took him number 2. And he couldn't figure out what type of a blessing is that. Praises to the floorboard. So he remembered, one second. I'm sorry. This was a story from the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Mittler Rebbe, second Rebbe of Chabad. So he didn't understand what was it. The next morning when he was praying, when he was praying, suddenly he remembered that the day before, he noticed that the synagogue of the second Rebbe of Chabad, it was very long. It was long. It was sort of wide, but it was very long. And he noticed that on the floor, there was one board that wasn't cut up. It went from the very end, one end to the other. It must have come from a very, very tall tree. And he said, I wonder if I can start praying at one end and finish praying at the other end. That's what he did the day before. So he started praying on one end and he finished at the other end. But of course, when he was doing that, he wasn't thinking so much about, God or anything. He was thinking about, can he say the prayers from one end to the other? And the Rebbe somehow or other must have known that. And that says, what are you saying? Praises to the floorboard. It was when you pray, think of the simple meaning of the word and pray to God, right? Instead of the Kabbalistic meanings, the deep meanings. That's also very nice. But the other chassid that he told to listen, to read the Tanakh, the prophets and this, with a simple Yiddish meaning. So he read this story here. This story that we just finished reading. And what does it say? That the child died, and he put his mouth on the child's mouth and his eyes on the child's eyes, and he blew out, and the child came back to life. Okay, according to this story, the child had been dead for, probably several days. He had been dead. And not only that, it sort of doesn't make sense. What does he have to put his hands on him and his eyes on him? The main thing is artificial respiration. But he didn't understand that. He understood simply what happened. One day it was a cold winter day, cold winter night. He worked hard in the daytime. He came home. The house was nice and warm. He took or maybe it was Shabbat. It could be it was on Shabbat. And he took his heavy coat and he threw it into the bedroom and he sat down to eat. His wife left the table to feed the child. The child was a baby, to nurse feed him, breastfeed him. And she gave out a scream. What happened? She moved the child from his bed into her bed. She went to sleep with him. He was crying, whatever. And the child fell asleep and left him there. When he threw his heavy coat, he threw it on the child. And it suffocated the child. And she saw the child was dead. Suddenly he remembered what he read in the Yiddish translation, because he didn't understand Hebrew that well. He was a simple Jew. He read with the simple Jewish translation, the story of the book of stories that he wrote it in Yiddish. So he read the Yiddish thing. He understood that. He realized this must be the Rebbe wanted to do. So he laid on top of the child, put his mouth on his mouth, his hands on his hands, and he breathed into the child. And sure enough, the child came back to life. He did artificial respiration, and the child came back to life. It could be that it was 50% miracle and 50%, natural, but whatever it is. But because he read what it said there and he sort of misunderstood it, but nevertheless, he took it simply, as that brought the child back to life. And that was the blessing that the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe, gave to him, and how he improved both of them. One took his prayers more seriously, and the other enlivened his son. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, tomorrow, God willing, we'll learn a Sikha of the Rebbe. Friday, have a good day, all of you, with Mashiach now.